What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 29th episode of the PlayStation Drive. I'm one of your hosts, the man on the moose, Ryan Turford, and I'm joined, as always, by the man himself, Matt Sawinski. Matt, how are you doing on this lovely, lovely Thursday where it's apparently like 10 degrees outside today, which is crazy?
Yeah, it's 10 degrees and gross and rainy and weird. I'm all right, Ryan. I'm a little bit stressed. It's been a hell of a week. We're getting ready to head off to Mexico for our wedding festivities tomorrow, and things are still a little bit on fire, but that's okay. We'll put that out. But we're here to talk about more fun stuff. How are you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing good. So first off, congrats. It's finally happening.
Thank you.
You're finally getting married. So next week, of course, we actually will not have a normal show next week. We actually pre-recorded a special episode with our predictions for the Game Awards. So you can actually look out for that. It'll actually go out on Thursday instead of Friday next week because the Game Awards are actually on Thursday. So there'd be no point in putting our predictions for the award show on our normal day. So it'll go live the same day as the Xbox Drive next week. So new day next week, but same show. And then Matt will officially be back in 2 weeks from sunny Mexico. So I'm very happy for you. I'm excited for you to tell us all kinds of great stories when you come back. And we'll talk some more games when you come back, my friend. But until
Thank you,
then,
Ryan. I'm super excited.
Until then, let's clean the garage a little bit and kind of get into the show. So if you like what we do and you want to support the show, there's a number of ways to do that. Number one, you can actually subscribe to us on your podcast feed of choice. Google Play, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're all the places that you find podcasts. So check us out there. Also, if you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we will read it right here on the show. Also, you can subscribe to us on YouTube if you want to see our beautiful faces every single week. We put up a video version of the show every single Friday morning. So check us out over on YouTube, youtube.com/YumiCapri. Of course, like, subscribe, share, hit the dangle, all the things that people on YouTube tell you to do. And then last but not least, if you want early access to this and all of our shows, head over to Patreon. Patreon.com/YumiCapri is how you do that. Through a little tip in the old tip jar, and out comes content, including a brand new episode of the Yumi Capri podcast, which Sean and I actually recorded a couple days ago, and it's up now. So you can go check that out as well. We talk about all kinds of stuff on that show. So check it out as well. All right. Let's grab our 8-tracks, pop them in. It is time for the playlist because we played games this week, Matt. And by many, I mean, we played a few. So Matt, start us off. What'd you play this week, my friend?
I did not get too much PlayStation time in this week. There was a couple different reviews that I was working on, one of which went up a couple days ago for a game called War Tales. So that's on PC. But basically, if anybody's looking for like a cool early access, it's tactics-based RPG, but with like a really hostile world where you're pretty much just another person in it. And you're not like the hero, you're not anybody, so it's difficult, it's tough. Some issues, but if you're curious about more, we have a review up on the channel. And then I hopped back into Beat Saber. I've been working on my fitness, Ryan, for the last little while. I've been trying to get into my beach bod shape ready for Mexico. Of course. So I spent a lot of time before using Beat Saber as like a way to exercise, and I was like, you know what? I'm feeling the itch again. I haven't played it in a couple of weeks, so I've been pretty religiously playing it for the last little while to some good effect. I think it's a great way to work out. The one issue that I'm having now, Ryan, is that because my PSVR was a launch model and I have used it for exercise before and continue to do so, the kind of the headrest piece is all flaky now. So every time I take it off, I just have black bits left all over my face and my head. And unfortunately, you can't really replace those very easily. So I'm very much awaiting the PSVR 2. But yeah, it's still great. Like, I love the song packs. There's so much good in that game. And it's one of my go-to VR games. And I enjoy it quite a bit, Ryan. Nice.
That's awesome. I mean, especially because like you're picking it up right at like the perfect time of year too. Because like, for the most part, it's starting to snow. I mean, today is kind of an oddity where, the snow is kind of melted. But for the most part, it's just like, how much exercise are you really going to do outside when it's like, minus 10 or minus 20 with snow everywhere, right? So yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's like my routine, I have a routine that I do around the house, but also I have like Ring Fit Adventure as well to kind of help out with that. So nice. Nothing PlayStation related, just because I don't have a PlayStation VR, but I think Beat Saber is probably like a good alternative to that, which is good to hear. As for me, I played a game I talked about on last week's show that I had actually just picked up pretty close to when we actually recorded last week, so I didn't get a chance to talk about it or get a chance to play it ahead of time. But Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba The Hinokami Chronicles. This is the new arena fighting game based off the Demon Slayer anime from Ufotable. And I'm actually having a lot of fun with this game. I mean, it's a CyberConnect fighting game. CyberConnect, of course, is the company that makes all of the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm games. They also made a couple other like One Piece games and stuff like that, as well as like I think they made one of the My Hero Academia games as well. So,
did they make the Kill la Kill game too? Is that the same person that I'm thinking of?
No, that's Arc System Works that made that.
Thank you. Go on.
But yeah, so I actually am having a lot of fun with it. Of course, it's not perfect because I know a lot of the CyberConnect games are not really perfect, but it follows the storyline from the anime, and it kind of goes through like the beginning of the first season to the end, and essentially follows the main character along the way. So for the most part, if you like Demon Slayer and you like 3D fighting games, you're probably going to really enjoy this. I know we talked about it on the show before, how it's actually selling really well. So I know a lot of people are actually picking this one up. But it's also kind of odd too, because again, this is coming from Sega and not Bandai Namco, who is like worked with CyberConnect on all these anime adaptations for years. So it's weird that it's coming from Sega, but it's pretty fun. I'm actually really enjoying my time with it. There's a ton of characters to unlock along the way, because you only really start with like a very small party to start with, but then you're unlocking characters as you go throughout the story. And then we just talked about, I think on the show last week or 2 weeks ago, they added 2 new characters as well, which are also fun to play with. So I'm curious to know if they're going to maybe add more content to the game, because I know that there's some maybe if they add some characters from season 2 or something like that, like I would be really interested to see what else they can do with this. So yeah, it's fun.
So I have a question, because I haven't played one of these CyberConnect anime games in quite some time. I think the last one I actually messed around with was like Ultimate, the first Naruto one that they did. Yeah. So like outside of the fighting, what else is there to do? Do you run around talking to characters? Are there side quests and stuff, like, or is it pretty much like do a fight, run to the next place, do a fight? Like, how does this gameplay actually work? Because I haven't touched one in a long time.
So the gameplay itself, when you play the campaign, obviously there's a versus fighting mode and an online fighting mode, and they're all just one-on-one battles. But in the campaign itself, it's kind of like a visual novel. And then in some chapters of the storyline, you will go to basically like this open world kind of area, like a small condensed open area, kind of similar to something you'd see in like Rise of the Tomb Raider or something like that, where essentially you're going around, and as you go, you're fighting demons along the way, essentially, is kind of how that works. And it basically brings you into kind of a one-on-one fighting battle with them. Depending on what you run into. So not only that, but there's like giant bosses as well, because some of the demons get really, really, really big, and they have multiple phases and stuff like that. And then if you use certain moves on people at certain times, depending on who's fighting who, like clips from the anime will kind of flash in and there are some nice visual touches as well. So yeah, they've definitely made improvements to the formula again, but the fighting formula, even going back to something like Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm, the very first one that came out, it hasn't really changed too much since then. And that's maybe why one complaint is that it feels super similar to the Naruto games, to the point where like, other than the fact that you're not throwing shurikens at people and you're using, water arts instead of, ninjutsu. I mean, it pretty much feels the same as far as the fighting is concerned. So I wish they maybe evolved the formula at least a little bit from those games, but still, if you like that fighting system and you like Demon Slayer, I think it's a great pickup. So
cool. I might check it out, actually.
Nice. All right. Before we go into breaking news, though, Matt, we've actually had like kind of a tradition that's been happening, and I didn't put this on the doc, so it's kind of a surprise for you, that on the shows this week, where essentially Black Friday happened last week. And on the Nintendo Drive, if y'all listen to that, basically Sean and Kato were talking about like the 20 games they picked up on Black Friday, and they continued to pick up games on the show. And then Sean and I toned it down yesterday on the Xbox Drive by talking about, the few games that we picked up. So Matt, I have to ask you, I know obviously you're going on this big trip to Mexico, so maybe you didn't have as much money for games, but did you pick up anything during Black Friday?
Yeah, so as we talked about, I actually did pick up Jump Force. I picked up the Ultimate Edition alongside the Character Pass 2. I mean, I still haven't downloaded it and played it, but I'm happy to own it now, and I'm curious to check it out. And I picked up 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim.
Yes.
So I will be hopping into that. That one I'm very, very excited about. And then the other like game-related thing that I picked up on Black Friday was the Final Fantasy XIV cookbook. It was on sale on Amazon for like 50% off, and that thing like just came out.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I am going to go back to Final Fantasy 14 at some point. I am like getting back into the swing of cooking. I've been cooking on and off, but like I've been a little lazy the last little while and things have been a little all over the place. I'm like, this is a great opportunity for me to jump back in. And when I reestablish my skills, I will cook you some nice Final Fantasy 14 food, Ryan, because I tweeted about it and I'm going to do it.
Very nice.
But yeah, that's kind of the major stuff that I picked up, because everything else that I was kind of looking at, we've either gotten through some way, shape, or form, whether it was PlayStation Plus or it's on Game Pass or whatever. And like I said, the only other one that I was eyeing, but it wasn't really on sale, was Death's Door. But I like after reading about it some more, and I didn't realize it was like 8 hours long.
Yeah.
I'm probably just gonna rip through it on my PC. So I missed out on that. What about you, Ryan? What did you end up picking up?
So actually, I'm kind of like you, where I really didn't pick up that much either. In fact, Sean was very surprised when I told him I didn't pick up much, but it's just like a lot of times, similar to what you were just talking about, most of the time when games go on sale on Black Friday, I have most of the ones that I would want already by the time Black Friday rolls around. So I did pick up 2, but they were on Switch, so not on PlayStation, because I ended up picking up Cruisin' Blast, and I also ended up picking up Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, which is kind of the remake of Monkey Ball 1 and 2. But and I did pick up Jump Force as well, kind of to your point as well, because I picked up that and kind of the Character Pass Season 2. So then when it disappears from the store, I won't be, sad that I didn't pick it up ahead of time. So yeah, I mean, for the most part, that's really all I picked up as far as games are concerned. I did treat myself a little bit with, again, something that's not PlayStation related, but it is kind of gaming related, because I did actually pick up, and I'm waiting for it to arrive, a Analog Omega SG, which, for folks that don't know what that is, that's actually a Sega Genesis clone system from the company Analog that plays Sega Genesis cartridges and Sega CD games, but outputs them in 1080p over HDMI,
cool.
which is going to make my games look really gorgeous. And I have a big collection of Genesis and Sega CD games, and I saw that because they don't come in stock very often. So I saw that they were in stock, and I was like, you know what? Since I'm not buying games on Black Friday, and since this is here, essentially the sale was the fact that it was in stock and available to buy. I decided to actually trip myself there instead. So there you go.
Yeah, right. Treat yourself. That's awesome. But wait, hold on. Can we go back to this for a second? Sean and Kato picked up 20 games.
Yeah, but they ended up.
What did they buy?
Well, Kato was mentioning on the Nintendo Drive that she was essentially scrolling down through the 1,000 games that were on sale on Switch over Black Friday, and like she was like picking up this game for $2 and another game for $2 or $3, and there was games that were 99 cents that she was buying, like this game called Roar, where you play as a dinosaur. That was $2. So yeah, go back and listen to that episode because they talk about it. I will. I know Kato herself, I think she said she picked up 13 or 14 games, and then Sean picked up a whole bunch himself to combine them to about 20 games. So yeah.
Jesus, yeah, I'm gonna have to go check that out, because who has the time? Who has the time to play all that? Good on them. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Whereas that's why even if I don't always get my games on sale, I would rather just get them when I'm kind of in the mood for them, when I know I'm going to play them, because then I know they'll get played. Because I don't like collecting games or buying games that I know I'm not going to play or get to. And that's kind of a big thing with retro game collecting too, where it's like, yeah, I could actually complete my original Xbox set that I'm actually close to completing, but almost all the games I have left are sports games. And am I really going to go back and play, Madden 04 on the original Xbox? Like, when am I ever going to play that, right? So I don't like to, clutter my space with all kinds of games I'm not going to play. So the Mega SG was like definitely the thing for me to get anyways. And I'm so excited to actually maybe stream some Sega CD games with it and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. But
woo!
All right, let's slam the brakes on this conversation. It is time for some breaking news. And it's slim pickings, again, because it was Thanksgiving in the States, of course, last week, and Black Friday. So believe it or not, lots of news in the Xbox land, but not so much in PlayStation. But we got some stuff we should talk about. Starting off with December's PlayStation Plus games. They've been revealed, and we've got 3 games, and one of them is really interesting here. So we've got Godfall Challenger Edition, Lego DC Supervillains, and Mortal Shell. Now, folks at home, if you don't know about Godfall Challenger Edition specifically, as opposed to just Godfall, which released alongside the PlayStation 5, Godfall Challenger Edition is not the full game. It is actually basically provides you an end game character that's fully leveled up with all of the equipment that you would need for the end game content, and you have access to 3 end game co-op modes. But if you want the campaign for Godfall or any of the other content that comes with the game, you actually have to buy the paid upgrade to the deluxe edition, which comes with the campaign and everything else. So yeah, I mean, before I go to you and ask for your opinion on this, Matt, I kind of want to bring in Court Lalonde on kind of the point I just talked about, which said, was this PlayStation Plus drop a misstep? They have given users so many great titles, and then with Godfall being pretty much just a demo, they instead of giving us the full game. So, Matt, what do you think about this month's PlayStation Plus drop? Do you think it's a dud like Court slaying here, or?
Okay, so I'm going to leave Godfall alone for just a second because I want to start off with something positive. Lego DC Supervillains, by all accounts, from what I've heard, is a fantastic game. I haven't actually played a Lego game since probably Lego Marvel's Avengers, so I'm excited to jump in, do some co-op stuff with with my partner. I'm excited to check it out. I've heard a bunch of good stuff about Mortal Shell as well. It's been on my watch list for a while, and it's one of the things where I was like, I'll pick it up one day. Now I'm glad I'm getting it. I can check it out. I don't know if it's going to be for me personally, but I'm excited to give it a whirl. Now, Godfall Challengers Edition is one of the biggest head scratchers I've seen on PlayStation Plus, possibly ever, because it is a glorified demo. I don't understand the mentality here of giving you an end game character, letting you do end game stuff with the hope that you're going to want to purchase the base game, roll the character all the way back to the very beginning, and then after already playing with an endgame character, restarting at ground zero and rebuilding them up. I just don't get it. It's not like Godfall's selling incredibly well still. It's not like it's a massive commercial success where they're like, we better really hold on to this one and not not give this away for free. Yeah. This to me, just like at the end of the year, it's holiday season. People have raised expectations when it comes to PlayStation Plus and Games with Gold during the month of December, which I mean, is regardless of whether that's the company's problem or not, I think it's something that should at least be kept in mind. To drop Godfall Challenger Edition is just, I don't get it. I don't care. And like, I've never seen a more volatile reaction on Reddit than it comes to this. People are like, don't even claim it. Yep. Don't show Sony that we want to support this kind of thing, because for me, I don't get it. If they just dropped this as a free demo, sure. But to include this as the headlining quote unquote PlayStation Plus title for December, it's baffling, dude. I don't get it. I saw some comments saying like, oh, don't worry, they're saving the campaign for January's PlayStation Plus drop, so that way they can
But
take
that's
one
even
game
worse. That's even worse. That eats up 2 games.
Exactly. So like, I'm sure they're not doing that. It was a joke that I saw online, but I thought it was hilarious. But I don't know, dude. This to me feels so strange, so weird, and just like, any like, I would have played Godfall's campaign. I'm not going to touch its endgame content because, again, the difficulty curve, learning the game, playing a game that you're coming into expected to understand endgame is just confusing for me. Where are you at with this one, Ryan? I don't know. So
this, again, the comparison I'm going to make here, of course, both of us play Final Fantasy 14. We play MMOs. This is like as if Square Enix gave away Final Fantasy 14's endgame content only, like gave you like the Shadowbringers content with like a max level character, and it was like, all right, you have access to all the Eden raids and and a couple endgame dungeons, and then if you want the rest of it, you gotta pay $30 for the deluxe edition. Which again, for the same point you were just talking about, Matt, like you have an endgame character at that point. Why would you want to roll back and start the whole thing over again at that point? I mean, yes, the story is really good in Final Fantasy 14, so obviously you'd want to experience that. But it's just like, it kind of reminds me of something like that, where it's like so stupid that I can't even believe that this is a real story that we're talking about. Like, I hadn't even put, like, when they'd first, when the games had leaked and we didn't know it was the Challenger edition of Godfall that was coming, and we just thought it was just normal Godfall. I was like, okay, I probably will never play Godfall, but I'll at least claim it, and maybe I'll check it out eventually, especially because there is a campaign there and stuff like that. But that's like kills any excitement I would ever have for wanting to play this game at this point. Because again, this is like, why would I want to jump into the end game for a game that I didn't even play? Because yes, that's probably just Gearbox saying, look, the end game is the best part of this game, so we want to give it to you right away. But it's like, it will feel less earned that way in a lot of ways. And you're right. Like you'll come in and the difficulty curve will be super high because of the fact that you haven't really learned all the stuff as you've been playing it, which is, what games like this are designed to do anyways. Like a game like Destiny doesn't give you all the tools right away, you have to earn them as you kind of go. And I mean, all the games, service games do that for a reason, not just to kind of plunk you in and be like, all right, you're going to just do a raid now, even though you've never played this game before. So,
and that's a fantastic point, and something that I actually hadn't even considered. This is like a loot-based game, right?
Yeah.
You're expected to collect different loot, try out different weapons and stuff, and kind of figure out what you like to go into endgame content comfortable with the build that you enjoy, instead of just being given stuff here and being like, whatever. I also love your point that it kind of kills excitement for this game entirely. Mm-hmm. Now, out of principle, I'm never going to play this game. Even if we get the base game, for me, I'm kind of like, I was like 20% curious to check it out if we ever got it for free. Now, if we get the campaign, I'll be like, no, forget it. I don't even want to touch you because this sucks. This just, God.
So then I have to ask you this question, Matt, because I haven't played the game I'm about to ask you about, but I know you'll have. What's a worse PlayStation 5 release for PlayStation Plus, this or Hunter Arena Legends? What do you think?
You know what? This is worse. Hunter's Arena Legends at least gave you the game and let you play it and let you try out the different legends. And it was a complete game, regardless of the quality of the complete game. I know people do enjoy it. I know people did connect with it. It wasn't for me. But at least people could play it to the full extent that they wanted to. Outside of this, of them being like, hey, you want to die 400 times because you don't understand how to play this game and we're throwing you up against the hardest enemies and bosses in the entire game? You want that? You're going to enjoy that. This feels like, I don't know. Like, I you know what? I'll give it to Hunter's Arena Legends. This Hunter's Arena Legends is a better example of a PlayStation Plus game than this, whatever this is.
Yeah. Oh, man.
God.
But then the other two games, to your point, Lego DC Supervillains. I haven't played it either. We have a question about the Lego games, which we'll get to in just a second. So I'll talk more about that there. And then Mortal Shell, I've heard good things about, but I don't really love Soulsborne style games, and that's what Mortal Shell is. So definitely, if you're into that genre, I think you'll probably enjoy it because I've heard a lot of people say good things about it. So, I mean, it's probably awesome. But I want to bring in Foolish Fuji at Foolish Fuji, who asked the question. I have played a lot of Lego games, but I have never played Lego DC Supervillains either, so I'm definitely looking forward to trying it out. Have you played any of the Lego games out there, and which one's your favorite? So, Matt, do you have a favorite Lego game? Because I know you said that you've played a bunch of them before, like you played them before, Marvel's Avengers, I think was the last one you said, so do you have a favorite Lego game? What do you think about them?
For me, like I am very passive when it comes to the Lego games. I played a bunch of them like when I was younger, back in like the PS2, PS3 days. I remember playing like Lego Lord of the Rings and like some of the other stuff there. So I played a bunch of like the old school ones. And as I've kind of grew up with gaming, I appreciate them for what they are. Mm-hmm. The pretty much only reason that I picked up Lego Marvel's Avengers at the time was because it was one of the few games that was available to play multiplayer on PS4 back in the day.
Yep.
So like playing with like my younger nephews and stuff, like I had a blast playing it. It controls well. Like we basically, once we unlocked the full city room, we basically just spent hours playing hide and seek. Mm-hmm. Like not even playing the campaign. So for me, I respect them and I enjoy them for what they are, but I have a hard time getting through the campaign just because usually the combat's a bit simplistic. Like the way that the story is told is like, it's funny, they're cute, but I have not actually finished the campaign and I can't even tell you how long. Probably since like the Lego Star Wars days, like back in the day. Okay. But what about you, Ryan?
So I've played a lot of the Lego games as well. The last Lego game I played was, I'm drawing a blank here. It was definitely, I think it might have been Lego Dimensions, actually, to be honest. I think that might have been the last one I played, which actually, oddly enough, is actually my favorite Lego game. That one I went hard on because Lego Dimensions, of course, was the Toys to Life Lego game where essentially you bought all of the Lego figures in real life and then you had a base stand and you scan them in. Because one of the things I liked about Lego Dimensions in particular, one, I think the campaign was actually really well written and it was just a ton of fun to go through. Yeah, it's a little more simplistic, but you're essentially using all the powers from all of the different toys that you have in real life to then put on the base stand to kind of get you through the experience in a lot of ways. Although it does provide you the three figures and they're basically enough just to get through the whole game and get the platinum trophy if you just want to play kind of the base game itself. But then what really made it special was some of the add-on expansions that they had for it that added content. In particular, some of my favorites from that were Portal, because they actually brought back the voice of GLaDOS to do a whole bunch of lines. And it essentially is like almost like this new Portal game, but just in Lego form. Like it was so cool that it almost made me wish that maybe they would just commit to doing just a full Lego Portal experience, because it's not just like, it takes kind of the simple gameplay of the Lego games, but then give you a lot of puzzles that revolved around the portal gun. And it really just felt like playing Portal just in Lego form. So I really love that expansion. But then they also did this Sonic the Hedgehog expansion, which was really fantastic. And one of my favorite things about that was like, you go to this, there's this really funny moment where you go to a water level, and Sonic has like this post-traumatic stress syndrome where he's like freaking out. He's like thinking back to all the times he's drowned in all the Sonic games, and you hear the music of him drowning and stuff like that. It's just like, it's little moments like that were like really funny, but combined with the fact you had stuff like Ghostbusters, where they had like a Ghostbusters pack that told the story of like the very first Ghostbusters movie, and you had all the figures for all 4 Ghostbusters and stuff like that. So I really love Lego Dimensions. I think that game's fantastic. And I wish there was a way to play it today without the base in, but part of what made it special was building the figures yourself and basically having like this giant Lego collection come from Lego Dimensions that you also played with in the game. So that's one I really enjoyed. And if someone out there is looking for a Lego recommendation, that's always the one I would recommend, even though the toys are, again, a little bit harder to get today than they were kind of when it first came out. But I really like that one. And then I even like a lot of the older Lego games, like you were talking about on, I played them on the original Xbox, but Lego Star Wars 2, stuff like that. So yeah.
I so wish that like Toys to Life was a thing when I was growing up. Like when I was like, if I was like 10 when that stuff was happening, I would have been like whining to no end, being like, Mom, I just need one more Lego minifig. Come on.
Yep.
It's just,
Now you know why Sean
so
Capri has
cool.
so many Skylanders in his house.
Right? Again, Skylanders, I would have been over. I would have been ended. I would have spent way too much money on that.
Yeah. Sean actually has a pretty big Skylanders collection. All right.
Nice.
And then the other news story, I actually put this one in here mostly from Matt, because I'm curious to know what Matt thinks about this one. Revealed during an investor presentation at DC Universe Online developer Dimensional Inc. Studios, they have announced that their next upcoming game is going to be a, quote, Marvel IP-based massively multiplayer online game. This project was apparently canceled back in 2018, according to the GeForce leak that, of course, has been populating stories for a while now. But it's apparently been revived and will be coming out sometime either in fiscal year 2022, they said on the slide. So not only that, but we also have word that the director of both DC Universe Online and City of Heroes is actually heading up this project, which for those that haven't played, City of Heroes or DC Universe Online, both those are actually like really solid MMOs, especially if you like superheroes. So Matt, I think this sounds like a brilliant idea, but I got to know, being the comic book fan of the two of us, what do you think about this?
I'm so excited, Ryan. Final Fantasy XIV is dead. There's no hope for its future. Marvel's MMO is going to take over the world. No, but in all seriousness, I'm really stoked about this. I played a bunch of DC Universe Online and City of Heroes. I never got far enough in either one of them just because... Did DC Universe have a subscription model?
It did for a while, and then it went free to play.
Yeah, so I was trying to play it back in the day, and of course, like trying to sell my parents when I was younger on subscription models, which is not a thing. So for me, I'm excited that I'm at a point now where when this comes out, I can pay for it and enjoy it without even thinking about it. Mm-hmm. I really hope you're going to be able to make your own character, which I'm sure you will be. Like, I'm excited to make my own, superhero and kind of go exist in that Marvel universe. Mm-hmm. Super curious to see how it's going to do and how the gameplay is going to be like. I think that this could be like a massive hit if it's handled properly and it's not, microtransactions to all hell and back. Like, yeah. I hope everybody's looking at what happened to Marvel's Avengers as a massive case study of what not to do. So for me, I'm really, really excited about this. I can't wait to see it for the first time. And like, if it even lives up to what DC Universe and City of Heroes were doing, I think this could be really big and really, really cool. What about you, Ryan? I know you're not that big into comics, but you do like your MMOs. Does this idea do anything for you?
Yeah, it sounds really cool. Like, I would imagine you're going to create a hero like you were talking about, and it'll probably work similarly to DC Universe Online, where you'll have like a mentor, and it'll be like a Marvel superhero that they kind of looked up to, and you kind of get either some powers or abilities based from, like, you could look up maybe to Hawkeye and you get a bunch of like technical skills and stuff like that, or Wolverine, and maybe you get some mutant abilities and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm really interested to see where they go with this. Obviously, it's a tougher sell for someone like me to want to play a game like this, because even though I love MMOs, it is harder to sell me on a superhero game. Especially if it's not like something like Spider-Man, where I feel like Spider-Man, even if you replace the character with someone that wasn't a superhero, I still think that game would be incredible. And that's what I'm kind of hoping for here. Like DC Universe Online, I played for a bit, but it just didn't really stick with me. Part of it just felt like almost too old school because it did come out in the PlayStation 3 era, and I do think that it wasn't like as refined as I would have wanted it to be, especially with Final Fantasy 14 coming out around when I had decided to play it, because that was around the time that DC Universe Online went free to play. I just found like Final Fantasy 14 or even experiences like World of Warcraft just kind of trounced the gameplay for me, which is why I just didn't really stick with it beyond kind of the first like 10 to 20 hours of the experience, which again it sounds like a lot of time, but for MMOs, that's not a lot of time really spent with it. Yeah. So yeah, I'm hoping it's awesome. I'm hoping it's good. I'm excited to see more from this. Again, we don't really know much about it other than the fact that it exists and it's coming sometime in fiscal year 2022, which I would imagine goes until even like Q1 of 2023 at this point. But I don't know. I'm curious to see more about this. I hope it's awesome. And I from what I've heard from other people who play DC Universe Online free to play, I don't think the microtransactions are that bad in that. So I would imagine we get something similar here. Like they were not going to go the Ventures route.
I think you're spot on when talking about like the gameplay on DC Universe Online was a little bit lacking. And same thing with City of Heroes. But like I'm excited to see what this team can do with this property, and I'm assuming the money that comes along with working on a property like this in this day and age, because I feel like MMOs generally have come a long way, especially when you're just looking at some of the free to play stuff coming out of like Korea. Like I know that there's a recent one that I'm hearing a lot of people talk about. I think it's called Elion. So like there's it's a high bar to kind of jump into a new MMO these days. So I'm hoping that their quality kind of matches. And like again, if they have Marvel money behind them, I'd rather them take as long as they need to make this as awesome as possible, than kind of try and just get it out to kind of catch on to that Marvel craze, because I mean it's still rampant. I mean, battling. I don't know, Ryan, if you've tried to get Spider-Man No Way Home tickets.
Yep.
Because that was a mess. I had to drive to the theater. And there was like 30 people in line. So they went live. They were supposed to go live at midnight because that's where they went live in the States. They actually went live at noon. At midnight, the website crashed, the good old Cineplex website. I drove down to the theater at like 11:15, and there was already like 30 people in line in front of me. And by the time 12 rolled around, there was another 30 behind. I got my tickets, but Jesus. Anyways, sorry, so small tangent. Just very excited.
Oh no, I mean it's all Marvel related, anyways. But yeah, I didn't even bother because it's just like. Again, it's one of those things where like with MCU movies, I don't ever see them on day one anyways. And if I get spoiled, I get spoiled, and it doesn't really bother me that much. So Spider-Man, not only that, but I talked about this with Sean before, and you're not going to like this take, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Movies that do like parallel universe stuff are kind of like a turnoff for me in a lot of ways, especially Spider-Verse stuff. So I'm someone that just isn't really into this, like the fact that like having like multiple Spider-Man running around is not something that's exciting for me. So I'm actually less excited for this Spider-Man movie than other ones. So it's just like, yeah, I didn't really need to rush out and go get tickets or anything like that. And I know we're already getting a bunch of angry comments on the YouTube about this already, but you know, I just got to be me. I just got to be honest about what I like, and that's okay, even if I'm wrong. But
and that's fair, Ryan. Do you? Nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. But speaking of the G-Force leak, we're moving on to the carpool, of course. Friends at home, if you'd like to have your question read and answered on the show, you can leave us your question on Twitter. We put up a question post every single Wednesday over on Yumi Caprice on Twitter. You can also leave your question as a comment on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can leave your question there and we'll answer it on the show. Or if you join the Yumi Capri Discord, it's free to join. The link is in the show notes, and leave a question in the PlayStation Drive section. We'll answer it on the show, just like Mike at BlazeKnight0923. And he asked the question, loads of people are hyped about the potential return of Chrono Cross from Square Enix, myself included. Which PS1 era RPG would you most like to see make a return to modern consoles via remake/remaster? Personally, I'd go for Parasite Eve after Chrono Cross. So this comes back to kind of a rumor that we didn't really put in the show notes because we don't usually talk about rumors on the show until they're confirmed, because then we can kind of give you all the details and kind of, react to that. But kind of what Mike's alluding to is that during the GeForce Now kind of leak that happened, where there was like hundreds and hundreds of games kind of leaked as far as their titles were concerned. One of them was the leaked games was Chrono Cross Remastered. And then we got reports this week that from a composer over at Square Enix who was teasing their next major remake, and he was referring to that game being Chrono Cross. So it sounds like all indications are pointing to Chrono Cross coming back to Mike's question. So Matt, I'm going to start off with you. Is there a PlayStation 1 RPG that you would love to see come back? And also, did you play Chrono Cross? I don't think we've ever talked about it.
I have not played it. I've started Chrono Trigger a few times and then keep falling off of it, usually because I'm playing it somewhere that I just don't enjoy. Like for example, I've tried to play it on my phone, and it's just, again, I'm bad when it comes to that. So no, I haven't played Trigger and I haven't played Cross. I wasn't playing a lot of RPGs back in the PS1 era just because I was very, very young at the time. But the one that I've tried to go back to was Suikoden 2, just because I put in a good chunk into Suikoden, the first one, just because I keep hearing how important and how massive these games were. So I spent a bunch of time with the first one and I was really enjoying it. And I think just something else came out and, I kind of fell off of it. I'd be very, very curious to see those games come back kind of new and improved with, better graphics and kind of, quality of life updates, just because I understand how important they are to JRPGs and RPGs as a whole, so I'd be very curious to play like an updated version of this. But Ryan, I have a question, because I know that Chrono Cross, from my understanding, can be a bit divisive. Like There are people who really like it and people who really don't. And I think just because coming out after something like Chrono Trigger, why do you think they went with Chrono Cross over Chrono Trigger for this? Like you would think that, with Square doing Final Fantasy VII Remake, I would say arguably the biggest Final Fantasy game, quote unquote, like from the mainline series that people were looking for. I'm surprised that they didn't start with Trigger. And if that went well, then go to Cross. Why do you think they started with Cross? And are you excited?
So it is, to my understanding from hearing about this from other sources that I'm not going to name on the show per se, because most of them are kind of off the record. The licensing for Chrono Trigger in particular poses issues because the rights to Chrono Trigger are, I believe, owned by like 4 or 5 different entities. And anytime they want to re-release that game or literally do anything from it, they have to have like all of the parties sign off on it. And that includes one of the game's composers, as well as Akira Toriyama, who designed all the characters, who of course is known from Dragon Ball fame to Square Enix. And there's a bunch of like things in play that kind of prevent that from being kind of an easy remaster or remake, which is why, for the most part, we did get a Steam re-release of Chrono Trigger. But beyond that, the last time we saw Chrono Trigger get re-released was on the Nintendo DS. And again, it's one of those things where it's such a popular game in the West that, of course, it makes perfect sense to, re-release it or remake it on current gen consoles. But I think that has a lot to do with why we haven't seen that kind of happen yet. It's the licensing from Chrono Trigger, because it's not fully under Square Enix's umbrella, whereas something like Chrono Cross is. So it's a lot easier to, put out a game like this. You're not, trying to negotiate with a bunch of different parties as to like what direction this remake goes in and whether or not they can do it and stuff like that. They can just do whatever they want with it, kind of thing. So that's why I think that they went in this direction instead. Not only that, but honestly, you don't need to have played Chrono Trigger to play this game, because it's not, well, I shouldn't say it's not a direct sequel, but it's almost like a spiritual successor to it. But then there are some ties to the original Chrono Trigger. But at the same time, like, it explains it well enough that you don't need to have played the first one to play this one, with all the things that do come up. And again, I won't get into it because it's spoilery territory. And likewise, that's more of where the divisiveness comes in with this game, because most people will agree that the combat in Chrono Trigger is really fun, or Chrono Cross is really fun. So the gameplay elements are all there. It's just the fact that you don't really have a core cast of like 6 characters this time around in Chrono Cross. You actually have 100 different party members that you can recruit in this game. And where and when you can meet them is all completely pretty much randomized. So it can be a bit of a thing where it's like there's an immense amount of party members, which you would normally think, hey, that sounds really cool. But you don't really get to know many of them outside of a core set of them to really care about them in a lot of ways. So the roster just isn't as lovable versus, the 6 kind of core characters from Chrono Trigger in a lot of ways. So there's that combined with what they do with the aftermath of Chrono Trigger in this game, I think is kind of what puts people off on this one. But I actually really love Chrono Cross. I mean, I love Chrono Trigger too, but I actually prefer Chrono Cross in a lot of ways. So I'm actually really excited for this one to come back. I'm very excited to play it again, because I've been thinking about maybe playing the PlayStation 1 version again recently, but I was like, but as soon as I started hearing about this, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to wait at this point to see what's going to be happening with this. Also, we don't really know the scope of what this remake is going to be as far as it even being a remake itself, because The NVIDIA leak indicates that it's going to be a remaster, not a remake, which puts it along the same lines as like, Final Fantasy VIII remastered, which is probably going to be just, a kind of direct port of the game rather than, something like that. But we've also been hearing rumblings that maybe it's like a Trials of Mana style remake as far as, maybe turning it into an action RPG, putting it in 3D and stuff like that. I mean, it's already in 3D, but like third person camera versus, a overhead camera kind of thing. So
that's something that I was curious about. Like, if they do, if this is real and if this is imminent, do you think that they stay with the turn-based combat system, or do you think that they do try something a little bit different, a la Final Fantasy VII Remake? Like, what would you want from it, and what do you think is going to happen?
So I actually think Chrono Cross is one of the strongest PlayStation 1 games, role-playing games as far as combat is concerned. So my preference would be for them to change it. Like, I would actually personally prefer just a remastered re-release of the original game versus, doing a full remake, because I don't think it needs it. I think that, especially because it was a later PlayStation 1 game, its battle systems are really good and they still actually really hold up today, especially for like turn-based games. So I personally wouldn't like to see it go in the, action direction. Like, one of the reasons why I think, a game like Trials of Mana worked so well with that conversion was that Trials of Mana was already an action RPG. So you were essentially taking the action RPG elements from that original release and putting them in 3D versus 2D. So that's why it worked so well with that game versus changing the combat style in this. Like, I personally wouldn't like that as much, but I do think it would probably make it a little more accessible to people who don't like turn-based games. So I guess you could go either way with it, but I personally would prefer it just be, a remaster, just a re-release of the original game.
So then final question before we close out here. If it is a more simple, let's call it port remaster, right? If we get, what do you think the likelihood is of a stealth drop during the Game Awards? If this is when it is set to be revealed, do you think if it is like a more classic, more kind of simple remake, do you think they might just go and available now?
I think it's unlikely they do a stealth drop because Square Enix never does stealth drops for stuff. As far as I know, and maybe I'm blanking off one off the top of my head, but they usually don't do stealth drops, but they will announce, they're the type of company that will announce a game and then it'll be out in like a week or two kind of thing.
Cool.
So I would imagine it'd be something like this where it'll actually probably be out before the end of the year, like out this month, but it just probably won't be a day and date Game Awards thing, but who knows? It also depends on, again, the scope of the remake. Cause again, if it's more than just a re-release, it might be out longer, but who knows? But going back, before we go, I should answer Mike's question because I never actually answered what he was saying. So obviously my second pick would be, because my first pick to this question always is Chrono Cross, but Priorside Eve would actually be my second pick as well. Mike, we're kind of on the same wavelength here. So if I had to pick a third game, it would be like maybe a double pack with the two Tales games that are on PlayStation 1, Tales of Destiny and Tales of Destiny 2. Maybe if they want to, throw in the Japanese version of Tales of Destiny 2 with actual English translation, that would be nice because that game never came out here, because Tales of Destiny 2 here was actually Tales of Eternia, but they called it Tales of Destiny 2 because they didn't make any sense back then. So I would love to see those games get like a new light on them, especially because of how many people jumped into Tales of Arise. So that would be the other PlayStation 1 game I would love to see. But Matt, we got to go. But before we go, Matt, plugs go.
Yeah, you can find me over at Twitter at burnout_Matt and on YouTube at youtube.com/burnoutbreder. We just had a War Tales review go up, and we'll have some more fun stuff coming very, very soon.
Very nice, my friend. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can find us on Twitter at Yumi Capriz, on YouTube at youtube.com/Yumi Capri, and on podcast services around the globe. So from Matt Sawinski, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been episode 29 of the PlayStation Drive, and we're out. PlayStation Drive is fueled by patrons over at patreon.com/YumiCapri, and I want to say thank you to each and every one of our patrons from the bottom of my heart from your support across all of our content. And let's start by thanking our Premium producers, Dallas Ford, Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team, and Jonathan Brown over at youtube.com/PM Entertainment. Our Platinum producers, Robbie Bobby Miller and Trucker Sloth, and our Gold members, Argo, Brendan Myers, Dallas Robbins, Emily O'Kelly, Heather Boney, James Johnson, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Benji Kong, Marcus O'Neill, RJ Kern, Dano, Skinny Matt, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, Fulia Fuji, and Xavier Reyes. Thank you all for all of your support.